Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to Torah Lechaim with me, your host, Rabbi Anibal. It's great to see you. Great to see that you are connected. I already see some of the messages in the chat. I see Shali Chochinov. I see Priscilla Kerr. Yeah, I'm sorry you are dealing with COVID-19. There seems to be another wave going on. We got people at the office sick. Ay, it's again affecting people that I know. Hello, Andrea. Welcome. Welcome to the class. But I hope, Priscilla, you are having mild symptoms. I know you're vaccinated, so hopefully that would help to overcome COVID pretty soon. Yeah. So, Priscilla, you say, yeah, you got it. This, you got it. The kids, not yet. This, you're not yet. Who knows? Maybe he had it before and nobody knew. That's the thing. Marcella is here. Ruben too. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my son got it. My wife got it for sure. I don't know if I got it or not. I woke up one day with no voice. That's the only symptom. I did a rapid test, was negative. So was it COVID? Was it because I didn't sleep all night because my son was coughing? I don't know. You never know. I guess I will never know. Mernazen is here. Welcome. Let's see. Hold on a minute here. I like when I show your names on the stream. I like this feature that I have on my software. It's pretty fancy, eh? That I can do this. Holly is here. Welcome. Welcome. And let me tell you something funny, because I hope there is not too much noise on my microphone right now. My studio is in the basement. That is usually pretty quiet, except that I have a fridge and a little bit of a motor sound, but there is a new sound that I didn't have the entire winter. And now it started almost nonstop. The sump pump. If you live in Winnipeg, you know what I'm talking about. If you live in a house, the sump pump. We have lots of water under the houses. So we need this pump to get rid of all that water, but it's just almost in front of me, next to my studio. And it's a new sound. And I forgot about that noise. The noise of the sump pump, which is pretty annoying, but at the same time is good news. It means that the snow is finally melting. I already booked the opening of my pool. I have a pool in the backyard. So this year, I don't know if I have to pay extra to heat it. I don't care. I'm going to open it as soon as I can so we can start enjoying the swimming for a little longer this season. Let's see if we can do that. And so we are going to continue today with the preparation for Passover. Remember last class, we talked a little bit of all the events before the Israelites went into Egypt. And actually, we read that it was almost like Egypt was necessary to correct some of Abraham's flaws. Remember, we believe that all the flaws that we detected on Abraham, as mentioned in the Torah, somehow made it into the Jewish people. This is a beautiful allegory, right? And it's something that we can all relate to. I don't know if you ever realize that we get everything from our parents, the good and the bad. Sometimes we have this kind of bad habits and things that we learned at home, right? And then we have, sometimes it gets us into trouble, but then we learn from our mistakes and eventually we overcome it, and we do it better with our own children. So that's part of life. And this is the same what happened with the Jewish people. Abraham wasn't perfect. And that imperfection continued with the future generations. And eventually we read that Egypt as a concept was some kind of correction. So the generations living Egypt will get rid. First, we'll learn to detect and to realize that there are imperfections and that those imperfections could be overcome. Yeah. Andrea said, don't jinx it. No, of course not. Hey, I wish I would be that powerful to be able to do that, but it doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. Weather is weather, and whatever it is, it's gonna be right. And we are going to do the best we can with whatever we get. That's the idea. So back to the class. Remember previous events, a little bit about what Egypt means, and now I wanted to start talking a little bit about the last period of the Israelites in Egypt. Specifically, the last things that they experienced there were the plagues. I don't know if you realize that they were there for over 200 years as slaves. Okay? Then eventually one day they realize enough is enough. We don't want this life anymore, which is also a beautiful thing to learn from the Torah. It's almost like saying, if if they never said enough is enough, we will still be in Egypt as slaves. But good for them that one day they said, enough. We don't want this anymore. We want a better life. And once they said that, they were ready to leave. But it's almost like God said, okay, but just not quite yet. There are a few things. You learned a lot. For you to say enough is enough, that means that you learned a lot and you grew a lot, right? Now that you said it. They probably thought about it before, because I can't believe that in 200 years that they were happy with their situation, right? And they probably realized that it was uncomfortable, but they were never able to say it and to do something about it. Has it ever happened to you? You see, the problem is sometimes in life, we learn to be comfortable in our dysfunction. This is something so common for humanity. Sometimes we are dysfunctional in certain areas of our life, and we get comfortable within that dysfunction instead of trying to overcome it. We said, okay, this is the way it's going to be. So, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that way. But you have to be able to work for it, to overcome it. And that's what happened. Finally, the Israelites says, enough is enough. We are willing to do whatever it takes so we can get out of here. Moses came, and then the 10 plagues started. That was the last thing. That was the last thing. And you will think that the 10 plagues will be welcomed by the Jewish people. But they weren't. They weren't, because what happened is, after the first plague and the second plague came, Pharaoh actually increased their workload as a consequence of the plagues. Oh, really? You are going to send me the plagues? Look what I'm going to do to you. And then things got even more discomfortable, or more uncomfortable for the Jewish people because of the plagues. And they were almost ready to quit, but thank God they remained strong. They went through the process of the plagues, and hopefully they learned what they had to learn from the plagues, because the plagues had a double purpose. One was to teach something to Pharaoh and the Egyptians, but at the same time the plagues were sent so the Israelites will learn the last lesson before they left Egypt. What is that last lesson? Let's try to figure it out. And why is this so important? For a simple reason. You will see that the Haggadah states, let's go to the Seder now. It says, in each and every generation, a person is obligated to see himself or herself as if he personally left Egypt. In other words, every person might see himself as having left Egypt. This is hinted by the verse, and you must tell your child on that day, saying, it is because of what God did for me when I left Egypt. The verse does not say what God did for us, but rather for me, as if you too left Egypt. So, in other words, we have to feel it, but we have to be able to explain this to our children. So, let's say you're at the Seder, and your children, or whoever is at the Seder doesn't understand too much what's going on. They would say, what is all this about the plagues? Well, hopefully you will be able to tell them because you learned it here, because it's such a important part of the Seder, the 10 plagues. I wanted to discuss with you a little bit about this, okay? So if you have any idea, hi Corey, welcome to the class. If you have any comments you want to make about the plagues, what they mean to you, or if you have a special explanation that you use at your Seder, I would like to know. Please type it in the chat. I always like new insights to share in my Seder. So if you type a nice one and it's something that I don't know, I will quote you on my Seder whenever I had to explain about the plagues. So don't be shy. If you know anything, please let me know. Okay, so let's talk about the plagues. Let's begin with the first set of plagues. Okay, here. Thus say the Lord, but this you shall know that I am God. See, I shall strike the water in the Nile with the rod that is in my hand, and it will be turned into blood. Okay, so now the plagues begun. And the first one was blood, dam. Okay, dam. I know in English sounds funny when you say dam, but it's not English, it's Hebrew. Dam means blood. And that was the first plague that actually Shelley Chochin, what you said, let's see this. It says it's Ukraine for Egypt. Well, I think you're the one who said that you want to exit Ukraine, that you exit Egypt. So you say it's a little, yeah, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean. So the first plague. In fact, the rabbis split the plagues into sets of 3. So you have the first 3, the second set of 3, and the third set of 3. So 3, 3, 3, that's 9. And then the 10th was a category by itself, the death of the firstborn. That's something that is very difficult to put it with the others. Okay, so that's, and then you have the 10. So what were the first 3? Remember, there were blood, frogs, and lice, like in the hair, in the head. Okay, so what was so special about the 3, and why the rabbis are putting them together? Let's see. The first set of 3 plagues, blood, frogs, and lice, was to demonstrate the reality and existence of God, alluded to in the verse, "You shall know that I am God." This was due to the fact that Pharaoh denied God's existence when he said, "Who is God that I should listen to his voice?" Very interesting. Now we start realizing why Moses struck, what is it, past tense? You know what I mean? The water of the Nile, because the Nile represents divinity for the Egyptian, and all of a sudden you see blood. It's almost like Moses is killing the Nile, the god represented by the Nile River. And that's why now you see the blood. Very interesting. But the other thing that they have in common, these first 3 plagues, is that it wasn't actually Moses the one doing the action to create the plagues. It was Aaron. If you go to the Torah, that's something very surprising, that it was Aaron the one doing it. And there is a beautiful midrash explaining why. Because the first plague affected the water. The other 2, the second and third, has to do with sand. Actually, first 2 with the water. The blood and the frogs. Hit the water, the blood will come, the frogs will come. And the third one, the lice, was with the sand. The sand became lice. So why wasn't Moses? It was Aaron, because you will see that all the other plagues, Moses was doing the action and something was happening. Beautiful midrash saying that Moses couldn't strike the water or the sand. Why not? Because he was grateful to the water of the Nile and the sand of Egypt. How so? Well, the water of the Nile protected the basket, what he was placed when he was a baby, from where he was rescued by Pharaoh's uh, daughter. Remember that? Hello, Judy. Welcome to the class. So that water of the Nile River, who protected the basket, Moses was grateful. And so Moses didn't want to strike that water. So that's what Aaron was the one who did it. And then he has to strike the sand. And then Moses said, I won't strike the sand because the sand helped me when I have to bury the Egyptian that I have to kill. Remember the story that an Egyptian was hitting a Hebrew slave, and Moses, noticing that nobody was doing anything, he went and did something about it. And then he has to cover up that body with Egyptian sand. So he didn't like to strike it. So Aaron was the one doing it. And the Midrash said that God didn't want to put Moses into that situation, that he would feel uncomfortable doing it against two objects that help him. And then we learn that if Moses was grateful of something that is an object like water or sand, the rabbis say, Kal vachomer, even more so. We should be grateful to people that help us. And of course, to God that blesses us every day. So it's amazing how from the first three plagues, not only we learn that there is a God, but we also learn gratitude by understanding why was Aaron doing the actions that note Moses, because we are learning gratitude. But again, these are the first three plagues. And I see nobody else by Shelley Chochinov shares something about the plagues. If you have any favorite commentary about the plagues, I still want to know. I still need fresh comments from my Seder. Okay? So that's about the first three. Then we have the next three plagues. It says, and this is why it's also different. It says, but on that day, I will set apart the region of Goshen, where my people dwell, so that no swarms of insect shall be there, that you may know that I am God in the midst of the land. Aha! So, what we know here is that there is another thing that makes the fourth plague and following different from the first three. The first three plagues were suffered equally by Israelites and Egyptians. There was no difference. So the water became blood everywhere in the land of Egypt. Even the water of the Israelites became water. The lice affected Egyptians and Israelites as well. Why? Well, let's go back to the beginning. What it says, but this you shall know that I am God. Who is God talking to here? Moses, but who is you? Who is you? Well, the rabbi said you is both the Egyptians and the Israelites. So remember what I told you at the beginning, that there was one final lesson that the Israelites had to learn before they left Egypt. And that final lesson is learn, or you should know, that I, Adonai, am your God. And there are no other gods. Are you sure you really got that? And this was one way of doing it. So the first three plagues affected everybody, so everybody will get the message. Everybody will get the message. The Israelites, they weren't so sure. They weren't so sure. Look, there is a plague, but now the Egyptians are making our lives even more miserable. So maybe there is no God. So the second plague came, the third plague, and the Israelites got it after three plagues. The Egyptians didn't. And Pharaoh for sure didn't. So after the third plague, we will have that at that point, God separated the region of Goshen. And that is when the Israelites resided. That was the place of the residence. Remember, from it, we know this all the way from the story of Joseph and Jacob when they come to Egypt. That Joseph requested from that Pharaoh the region of Goshen. It was a fertile region because they had animals, and the Egyptians didn't like to deal with cattle and goats. I think, no, so okay, yeah, of course, take Goshen. Goshen is for you. And they stayed there all this time in the land of Goshen. So that's why, for the first time, the Torah will say, well, now that you got the message, I will separate this section. So look how interesting is this. How interesting is this, and how beautiful the metaphor is here. From now on, it's going to be a plague everywhere around, but the Israelites won't suffer from the plague. And I see this as a beautiful analogy. What's happening in the world sometimes, that we see lots of people suffering for things that I said, you know, if you can adjust your mindset just a little bit, you won't be in such pain. Of course, I'm not talking about when you live in a war zone and things. That's a major thing. I'm talking about daily things, little things that happen to us all the time, that we feel that we are going through a plague, and then there could be somebody else that, look, if you can learn to be a little bit more grateful, if you could take some time to appreciate a little bit more what you have, maybe you won't feel such pain anymore. It's almost like you can train yourself to feel that you're in the land of Goshen. Even when you will see that around you, there is so much people experiencing pain, but it's all about the way they experience life. And remember that the way it's presented here is that all this pain comes from the rejection of God. Because we will see that all the plagues, they were sent just to teach one single lesson. There is a God. As soon as the Israelites got it, they will see that Goshen was spared from all the pain that the rest of Egypt was feeling around. And again, take it as an analogy. Don't take it as a factual thing right now. Okay? Play with me a little bit. Bear with me and try to understand the message behind the story of what Goshen represents here. Okay? So Shelley Church, you say here, let me see. Is it the pain is internal, not external? Yeah, that is the kind of pain that we are talking about here. Yeah, and remember we talk about that. Egypt not as a physical place, but as a mindset. Egypt as Mitzrayim, a narrow place. That's what Egypt represents, a narrow place. I believe that after these plagues, when they understood the last lesson that they have to learn, even though they were still physically enslaved, they were already mentally free. So they got mental freedom before they got physical freedom. That's the way I read this. But Exodus 8:18, we just read it. Let's read a little bit of a commentary of this before we move on. So, the second set of 3 plagues, wild animals, epidemics, and boils, demonstrated God's providence. Okay? Pharaoh did not believe that the supreme God supervises each person and events individually. In the midst of the land, this demonstration of God's providence is alluded to in the verse, "You may know that I am God in the midst of the land." So let's see, Holly, what you say here. Were the plagues also to punish Egyptians, people who were compliant with the regime, but intended mainly to show the ineffectiveness of Pharaoh himself? Okay, this is interesting, the question, because I believe it's both. But my reading of the text is that the Egyptians got the message way before Pharaoh got it. But they were still punished. I said, how is that fair? And then I realized, well, it's not about fair, not fair. That's reality. How many times a nation suffers because of the inefficiency or corruption or malice or you name it of their leader, right? Because sometimes it happens that nations realize halfway that they elected the wrong leader and said, okay, we are stuck now. What can we do? And they keep suffering because of the what the leader is doing. And I believe this is what happened here. All of a sudden, for the last few plagues, the Egyptians were suffering because not what they did, but because of what Pharaoh did. And I wouldn't call it ineffectiveness. I will use probably a harsher word. Yeah, actually, you got it. Pudding, Pharaoh, you name it. We have many leaders that, and you will see their nations are suffering, and just because there is not much that they can do, not much they can do. And I'm pretty sure the Egyptians also, maybe at one point they were very happy about their Pharaoh, and then they realized that, oh, we are stuck now with this guy and we are suffering. And you will see it also as we approach the 10th plague that the advisors of Pharaoh said, for crying out loud, let them go. Let them go. We don't want to suffer anymore. No, Pharaoh continues because his heart was hardened and he wouldn't accept it. And his ego wouldn't allow him to accept anything. And it's not a coincidence that before Pesach we eliminate Hametz. Hametz represents the ego. And everything about Pharaoh is ego, ego, ego. I'm God, I'm God, I'm God. That's what Pharaoh was saying to himself and to everybody. I'm Pharaoh, I'm God. And Hashem was saying, no, Pharaoh, you're not God, you're a human being. I'm God. And that is what's going on here. And because Pharaoh was not able to get rid of that ego, that chametz, then he suffered. And with us is the same. If we are not able to get rid of our chametz, our ego, then we suffer. We suffer. Ego is bad. Is bad. And again, I'm not talking about self-esteem. Okay? Somebody said, what I mean, healthy self-esteem is no, it's not the same. Ego is not the same of self-esteem. Okay? Or the same thing that being humble, it doesn't mean that you have a low self-esteem. They're different things. Different things. Now, you may wonder, why am I saying that the ego is the chametz or the chametz is the ego? Well, because the chametz, you have to understand a little bit of chemistry here, how the process of fermentation works, right? You have water, you have flour, and you add yeast, which is the chametz, right? And what it does, it will start a chemical reaction that they will produce gas. And then because of the gluten that the flour and the water, with the flour has, right, that it will be activated by the water and the mix. So that dough won't allow that gas to escape the dough. So the gas will try to expand. So the dough will expand. And then all of a sudden you have this beautiful loaf of bread, but it's all gas. It's not, that's not the real shape of the dough, right? The dough is, technically, if you look at a piece of matzah, that's the real shape of the dough. Flat. Now add a little bit of gas and it will start growing, but it's artificial. So that's what happened with the ego. The ego will make you believe that you are bigger than you really are. You're full of air, right? And I think there is an expression in English about that. When you said, the head full of air. Am I right? Let me know in the chat if I'm right, if there is such a thing in the English language. So you can see how the yeast or the chametz, all you're doing is not real. It's air. It's air. It's an illusion. So ego is an illusion, but it will get you in a lot of trouble. Pharaoh was not allowed to control his ego we, hopefully, by preparing ourselves for Pesach and by cleaning up the Hametz in our house, if we understand what Hametz is, we can do it. We can do it. I know that we can do it if we engage in this. Now, let's go into the third trio of plagues. So, let's read about this. For this time, I will send my plagues upon your person and your courtiers and your people, in order that you may know that there is none like me in all the world. Okay? So Moses was being instructed to tell Pharaoh that the purpose of the third set of plagues, hail, locust, and darkness, was to demonstrate that God has absolute and unparalleled power and ability. Okay? Even though God's existence and providence were already demonstrated, Pharaoh still thought that there existed another gods and powers who might sometimes overpower God. This point is alluded to in the verse, in order that you may know that there is none like me in all the world. So this is the difference between believing in one God and believing that there is only one God. You know what I mean? Because you can believe that there are many gods, but you worship one. And you can say, hey, I'm monotheistic. I believe in all, I worship only one God. Yes, but you still believe that there are many others that kind of eventually overpower God. The concept here is for Pharaoh to understand that there is one God, period. That's all it is. And in Judaism, it's Corey, I will go back to what you wrote in a minute. I lost my train of thought now. Anyway, let me let me talk about what you said, Corey, because this is quite interesting. Yeah, how the Torah tells us how to control a person's emotion. God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Well, let me tell you what the rabbis say about that. Okay, there are a couple of explanations of what hardening Pharaoh's heart means. Number one, you will have somebody like Maimonides, that he stated that sometimes, because of your transgressions, because of your sins, the punishment is that God removes your free will. Okay? God removes your free will. It means that, sorry, it's too late, you cannot repent now. That's part of your punishment for everything you did, to remove the ability of repenting. And that's what happened with Pharaoh. God wanted to punish Pharaoh, so God removed Pharaoh's ability to do teshuvah, to repent. Why? Because if you know how it works, if you repent and you pray to God, then, and we'd say this on every high holidays, we diminish the severity of the decree. So Maimonides was saying, if God would allow Pharaoh to repent, then God wouldn't be able to punish Pharaoh with everything that God had in store to send to Pharaoh and the Egyptians. But that's the theory number one. Then you have Rabbi Albo, was also medieval. I believe that he was a contemporary of Maimonides around that time. Rabbi Albo will say, no, actually what happened is God had to harden Pharaoh's heart, because otherwise the plagues will remove Pharaoh's free will. In what sense? Well, I would say, if somebody stopped you on the street and put a gun on your head and said, give me all your money, of course you're going to give the person the money. You have no free will. You have no free will if somebody put a gun on your head. And if somebody said, of course you have free will, you can choose to die. Come on. That's not the way it works. Somebody said, give me your money or I kill you. That's not free will. You're not going to give the money out of free will. But if I remove all fear to guns from your being, then if you choose to give the other person your money is your decision and not because somebody put a gun in your head. You know what I mean? So what Rabbi Anibal was saying is, if God starts sending plagues to Egypt to say, let my people go, and Pharaoh said, okay, get out of here, Pharaoh will do it out of fear or out of discomfort from all the plagues, and not because Pharaoh truly wanted to let the Israelites go. And that's why God had to harden Pharaoh's heart, so Pharaoh wouldn't let them go out of fear, except that Pharaoh will learn the lesson, and then after Pharaoh learns the lesson, Pharaoh will let them go. Yeah. Let's see. Howard, what you said? Let me read your comment. However, doing that, the lesson of knowing that there is an all-powerful creator and not many gods will not have been learned. Well, everything depends. Isn't the death of the firstborn the ultimate gun to the head? Well, yeah, if your heart wasn't hardened. You see, we are reading the plagues without God hardening our hearts. So we get it, and we out of fear. Oh, of course, I will learn it after I will see children dying and think. But if you get your heart hardened, then you only react. You'll only react if you truly learn the lesson. There is a difference. Sometimes it's difficult to empathize with a Pharaoh who had the heart hardened. And yeah, and that's the thing. In fact, you will see that according to the Midrash, the Pharaoh didn't finish learning the lesson until his army died at the Red Sea. And that was the last thing that Pharaoh learned. Because you see, try to think it this way. Pharaoh let them go, then he changed his mind, remember, and he set his army after the Israelites. The Israelites crossed the Red Sea because the water split, but then the waters come back and then drowned all Pharaoh's army. What happened with Pharaoh? We don't follow up his story. Did he go back to Egypt? What did he do? We don't know. Did he go back home and cried? Was he killed by his people when he came back? We don't know. But there are many midrashim that try to explain what happened with Pharaoh. One of my favorites is that Pharaoh is, when on Yom Kippur, on Mincha of Yom Kippur, we read the story of Jonah. We read Sefer Yonah. Jonah the prophet, and goes to the city of Nineveh and said, repent or God will destroy you. And then the king repents. The Midrash says that king was none other than Pharaoh. And God sent Jonah to remind, because it said that Pharaoh learned the lesson, but then he kind of forgot it with time. Then Jonah was there, and Pharaoh remembered again, and everybody repented, remember, and God saved Nineveh. Beautiful midrashim that are trying to follow up what happened with Pharaoh after the Israelites left. It's very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Yeah, let's see here. You say, Howard, Pharaoh helped God show the Israelite that he was the God of God. Yeah, also, again, even though we say that the Israelites got the lessons after 3 plagues, they were still witnessing with what's happening with the other plagues, right? With the other 7. And they were also learning and reaffirming their faith every time that they were experiencing. But the difference is they weren't experiencing on themselves, but they were still quite aware what was going on around them. And I talk about this all the time, the ways we learn in life. Sometimes we learn because we go through mistakes, And that's fine. We all learn that way, right? Have you ever done something that, you ended up hurting yourself or somebody else, and then you learned the lesson, and then you learned it? Fine. But there is a better way. That is when you learn from somebody else's mistake. You look around, you read a book, you have teachers, mentors, and they will tell you, they will share with you their own mistakes. And then you learn from there, and then you won't make that mistake. Not because you experienced it, but because they experienced it. And now you learn the lesson. That's a better way of learning. And that's what happened with all the other plagues and the Israelites. At least that's what I believe. Marcella, you said Pharaoh didn't listen. Let's see. Pharaoh didn't listen or recognize the power of unique God, so he was punished. Yeah, but he was punished because he didn't learn. Had he learned the lesson before the 10th plague, the plagues wouldn't be necessary. But he didn't because of the ego. And that's it. So let's continue a little bit, because this summarizes what I was saying beautifully. The truth is, this is Rabbi Yerucham Leibovich, okay? The truth is that the main purpose of the whole exodus from Egypt is belief in the concept of miracles. So also, this is part of the belief in God, okay? The God being in control of the world and of nature. The main idea is to know and recognize that at the heart of existence is a spiritual core. One should know that existence is not just that which we see with our physical eyes or sense with our physical senses. The physicality that we see in creation is only clothing for the true existence. What is the true core to existence, which the Egyptians experience demonstrates? It is spirituality, which is the source of all creation. And this is also, this is fantastic also, because it's talking about the two realities of the world. And I believe that this is also why Purim and Pesach are connected. If you read in Purim, the book of Esther, everything is about physicality. Especially if you read the entire book of Esther from the point of view of the king, King Ahasuerus, right? But that was also only half of the reality. That was the only reality Ahasuerus knew, the physical world. How do we know that? Well, because when Ahasuerus remember when Esther went to talk to Ahasuerus and said, "Hey, my king, I have a favor to ask you." And Ahasuerus said, "Oh, ask me whatever you want. I will give you up to half of my kingdom." The rabbis say, hold on a minute. Why would they say half of my kingdom? Is it a hint? Well, the hint is that Ahasuerus represents physicality, and that's only half of the reality. In fact, Ahasuerus doesn't say half of my kingdom. Sorry. He will say, I will give you half of the kingdom. That is even more interesting, because if you are the king, they'll say, I will give you up to half of my kingdom. But Ahasuerus says, I will give you half of the kingdom. That's all I can offer you. All I can offer you, if you read the story with my lenses, is physicality. And then you have Esther and Mordecai that represents the other side, the side of spirituality. But then moving on to Passover, this is when we actually put all the focus, even more so, in the spiritual side. The book of Esther, the name of God is not even mentioned, and all the miracles and everything seems to be clothed in nature. But now in Passover, it's all the opposite, all these explicit miracles. A way that I have to admit, that's not the way we experience the world. We don't see the Red Sea splitting anymore. We experience the world more like Purim than like Pesach. But nevertheless, this intense focus on spirituality of Pesach is also to open our eyes, explaining that all the physical world, it's, as I said here, is clothing for the true existence. We have to be able to see beyond the physical world. Physical world is a veil. And that's what I said sometimes. I feel like the stories of the Torah are also clothed are clothing the true reality. So we read the Torah and we get lost in all the details and how this happened. Which year did that happen? Was it really like that? Can science prove that? Well, I think that's a trap when you start thinking that way and we start taking everything literally. We don't realize that the stories of the Torah are clothing the true reality that is behind those stories, right? The way we read the plagues and about what Egypt means. So it's not about Egypt as a country. That is a veil. It's Egypt as a concept, as a principle. What does Egypt mean to you? It's not something that happened 3,500 years ago. So that's the point. That's the point here. To learn all the things. So when we learn the plagues during the Seder, it's just to understand that there is something that goes beyond nature. Thank you, Marcella. I think you like the explanation. Very nice. Very nice. So there is something more. I think we still have 9 minutes that I wanted to share with you. And it's then you will say, okay, so Egypt is all about spirituality, the spiritual world. Well, yes and no. There are still lots in the story of the Exodus that we can learn in the physical world as well. And let me give you a few examples, because some of the most down to earth laws in the Torah are attached to the word Egypt. Let me show you. For example, when you go to the Torah and you learn about the prohibition of charging interest, okay? Look what it says. Do not lend your money at advance interest, nor give your food at accrued interest. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan to be your God. Very interesting. You see here, it said, don't charge this ridiculous interest. Why? Because you were in Egypt. What that has to do? Hold on a minute. Because you will see other things. For example, the tzitzit that we put in the talit, the fringes hanging in the four corners of the talit. Listen to this. God said to Moses as follows: speak to the Israelites people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corner of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all the commandments of God and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge. That you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, the Lord, am your God. Again, now the tzitzit, the commandment of the tzitzit, is also connected to Egypt. And there are more here. Oh, I didn't change. This is not the tzitzit. Should be honest. It's no, it's correct. That's what happens when you copy paste and you don't pay attention. So it says, you shall have an honest balance, honest weights, an honest ephah, an honest hin. I am the Lord your God who freed you from the land of Egypt. What it says here is, do not cheat in business. Do not cheat in business, right? Why? Well, because I'm God who freed you, who took you out of Egypt. So again, we have three things here connected to Egypt, and they are very physical things, right? Charging interest, the tzitzit that we were, being honest in business, and it's all connected to Egypt, and it has nothing to do with spirituality. Nothing to do with spirituality. Yeah, Shelley said, don't put your finger on the scale. Yeah, those were tricks used back in the day and that kind of economy, right? But the point is that it's talking about being honest in business. So listen to this comment here. It will say, Rabbi, this is from the Talmud, beautiful. Rabbi asked, why did God mention the Exodus from Egypt in connection with the following three things? The prohibition against charging interest, the mitzvah of tzitzit, and the mitzvah to have honest weight and scales. Why? The Holy One said, I am he who discerned in Egypt between the drop of seed which conceived a firstborn, and one which did not conceive a firstborn. So remember what happened, right? With God at the 10th plague. We are at 10th plague now. Killed everybody, but not the people who were in the houses with the blood on the doors. Remember that? That's why we call it Passover. So 2, I am he who will bring to justice someone who lends money, and from someone who cheats other by keeping his weights measures in salt, which makes them heavier without changing their appearance, and from someone who puts fake blue dye on his tzitzit and claims that it's authentic turquoise, tachelet. Okay, so in other words, there is another thing that we learn here, according to this rabbi, the rabbis in the Talmud, and there is the other thing that we learned in Egypt, is that God is a God who can actually be aware of what we do. So every time we cheat, God is watching, taking notes of everything you do. So even when we go through this physical world, we're always connected to God. And we don't want God policing over our life. That's why it's so important to develop a relationship with God, a friendship relationship. Because I believe that if you believe that God is a police officer, but that's what God is. But if you develop a relationship with God and you talk to God like you talk to your friends, that's the kind of God that God is going to be to you. So it is important in this time. So again, the Exodus is teaching us also a lot of things for our daily life. The way that we don't enslave people because we were slaves and we didn't like it a bit. So we are reminded all the time that we were in Egypt. In fact, in our prayers, it's every day of the year. We don't have to wait Passover to remember that we were slaves. It's part of the daily prayers. So that tells a lot of what kind of attitude a Jew should have in life, right? We don't want to do to others what it was done to us when we were slaves. So that's why we cannot stand slavery or injustice. That's why we have so many people in history, so many activists or peace activists, that they were Jewish, because that's the way that's what we teach every year in Passover. We like freedom, and we like freedom not only for us but for the whole humanity. So I hope that is the message that you will be teaching at your Seder, right? When your children ask, what does this mean to you? Start telling the story of Egypt. It's nice. Go back, tell what happened with our people. But why we do that? So we can be empathetic. That's the word. With other people that they are suffering in this world, and also to understand that this sometimes we get overwhelmed by things in life that it could be easily fixed if we can learn to be a little bit more grateful of everything we have and all the blessings that we already have in our lives. So this is what I wanted to teach you, and and I hope you got something out of this. And by the way, next week we have a special class. We have a special class with Dr. Jerry Cates from Edmonton. He's going to connect from his home in Edmonton, and he's going to teach about the Parsha just for a week, because it's very interesting. Next week Parsha is Metzora, which means leper. Talking about leprosy, the skin infection. And this doctor, he's a dermatologist, and he did a beautiful research. I was with him yesterday. He was explaining to me, it's fantastic. He actually made a research about all the skin's infections and things as mentioned in the Torah, and he is going to combine it with his medical expertise and to try to better understand what the Torah is talking about. So I'm going to host it, but he's going to be the one teaching you. So this is a perfect opportunity if you want to let other people know about these classes, because you cannot miss next week's class. Dr. Jerry Cates is going to be teaching about all the skin conditions in the Bible in the week of Parsha Metzorah. So we're going to have a parenthesis, a little break from our Pesach preparation to study with Dr. Cates. And then the week after, we're coming back and we're going to go through the Haggadah, learning a little bit so you can be even better prepared for your Seder. Okay? Remember, start eating your Hametz, start getting rid of your Hametz. If you want to sell the Hametz through us, I will be selling the Hametz, so you have to go online and sign our form, and I will be happy to do it for you. Okay? Thank you again, everyone, for participating. Thank you for connecting. I hope you're going to have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and hope to see you soon. Remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel. Just smash that like button. That's always good. And subscribe to our channel and hit that bell, that notification, so you will be notified every time we go live or every time we upload something to our channel. Bye for now. Stay safe. Hope to see you soon.